Hi everyone, welcome back to Clues by Sam. It's Monday and we have an easy one today, but we're not gonna do just this one. We're gonna do a harder one from the pack as well, so stick around if you wanna see that. And if you don't know what Clues by Sam is, it's a daily puzzle game where you have 20 people on a board. Each of them may be a criminal or an innocent, and you gotta figure that out using the clues that each person gives you. I'm here every day on the channel doing this, so if you try it and you get stuck somewhere, or if you just wanna go along with me, then watch the video. And if you want to try before watching, there is a link in the description. So today is a good way to start because we have an easy one, so let's do this together. We start with Olivia telling us there are no innocents above Zed who neighbor Dennis. So above Zed and Dennis are in different columns, but there's two people above Zed who neighbor Dennis, and none of them are innocents, says Olivia. So both Emma and Ivan are criminal, and we don't need Olivia's clue anymore. Now, Ivan tells us that both criminals below Barb are connected. So that tells us that Gary and Kyle are both criminals, because Vera, if she were to be a criminal, she would be separated from any others who are above Olivia. So we know that both Gary and Kyle are criminals, and we also know that Vera is an innocent. And we don't need Ivan's clue anymore. Now, Vera tells us that Dennis is one of 4 criminals in column C. So Dennis is the criminal for sure, and there's only one innocent in column C, since there's 5 people total, 4 of them are criminals. And Dennis tells us that an odd number of innocents above Xavier neighbor Mark. Above Xavier, there's an odd number of innocents, and all of those people who are above Xavier are in column C. We just determined that there's one innocent only in column C, so that's the odd number of innocents there is above Xavier. And we also know that Xavier is not the innocent in column C, so he is a criminal. And what else is it said? That that person neighbors Mark. Yeah, all of them neighbor Mark, so it doesn't really matter. We don't need Dennis' clue anymore. Now Xavier tells us that Mark has only one innocent neighbor, which means that Tina isn't an innocent, because the innocent neighbor for Mark's gonna be in column C, so Tina is a criminal. And we don't need Xavier's clue anymore. Now Tina tells us that only one of the 2 innocents neighboring her is to the right of Uma. So there's 2 innocents neighboring Tina. To the right of Uma, there's 2 people neighboring her, Xavier and Zed. Only Zed could be one of those innocents, so Zed's an innocent. And Tina has one more innocent who could be in column C, but it could also be Mark. So let's leave that clue there. Zed now tells us there's an equal number of innocents in column C and D. And we know that column C has only one innocent, so column D also has only one innocent, which tells us that Mark is not that innocent, the second innocent neighbor for Tina. And that it also tells us that either Lisa or Rose are the other innocent neighbor for Tina, and the single innocent neighbor that Mark has, which means that Helen is a criminal. Good, lots of info there. And Mark tells us there are exactly 2 innocents in row 5. Well, those 2 are Vera and Zed, which tells us that Uma is in column 5 and is a criminal. And we don't need Mark's clue anymore. Now Uma tells us that row 4 has more innocents than any other row. Since row 5 has 2 innocents, row 4 has to have 3, which means that both Rose and Nick are innocents. And we know that Lisa then is a criminal because of Rose. And yeah, let's leave Uma's clue there. Now Nick tells us that there are exactly 3 criminals in column B. 3 criminals. We have 2 of them who are Gary and Kyle. And the only person who could be the third one is Barb, so Barb's a criminal as well. And we don't need Nick's clue anymore. Now Barb tells us that Tina has more criminal neighbors than Nick. Nick so far has 2 criminal neighbors and Tina has 3 total. So it means that Nick couldn't have one more criminal neighbor, so we know that John is innocent. And now John tells us that Zed and him have an equal number of criminal neighbors. Zed has 2 criminal neighbors, which means that John's gonna have 2 as well, and those 2 are Gary and Kyle, which means that Frank is innocent. And now Frank tells us there are 13 criminals in total. So how many do we have already? 9 here, 10, 11, 12. So we know that Amy has to be the 13th one. Criminals, right? Yeah. Good. There was some talk about a plan there, but I didn't really pay attention to it. Oh, that's my new record? Is it? Did I solve 1 and 2? I think I did 246 some time ago. But yeah, an all green one for Monday. Let's see the harder one now. Okay, so here I have puzzle number 46 of the puzzle pack number 1. The second one is out now if you want to get it, but we haven't finished the first one yet, so let's try this one. And this one is a brutal one. This is my first brutal one ever made, so I'm really interested in seeing how this is gonna go. But let's restart it just so we get the timer reset, and let's go. Xavier tells us that both criminals in row 2 are Mark's neighbors. Well, in row 2, there's 2 criminals total, and both of them are Mark's neighbor, who is in row 3. So we know there's 2 criminals here, and there's only 2 criminals in row 2, which means that Gus is an innocent. Now Gus tells us there's an odd number of innocents to the right of Helen. So the second innocent in row 2 is either Isaac or John, which tells us that Helen is a criminal. And now Helen tells us that Flora is one of David's 3 criminal neighbors. So Flora is a criminal, and David has 3 of them, so 1, 2, the third one's gonna be either Isaac or John, which tells us that Bruce is an innocent. And we don't need Helen's clue anymore. Now Flora tells us that Vicky has more innocent neighbors than her. Well, Vicky has 3 people neighboring her. Flora so far is for sure gonna have 1 innocent neighbor who's gonna be either Isaac or John. She could have a second one, but she could not, so we don't know yet. We have another clue, which is Bruce's. Exactly 1 innocent in row 4 is neighboring Karen. 1 innocent in row 4 is neighboring Karen. Row 4 is here. One of these people, Paula and Rose, is an innocent. The other one a criminal. So now that tells us that Vicky has 1 criminal neighbor. So she has the same as Flora. So far, both of them have the same number of criminal and innocent neighbors. Since Vicky has to have more innocent neighbors than Flora, that means that David has to be a criminal and Will has to be an innocent. Because if both of them were to be criminals, they will have the same number, and if both of them were to be innocents, they will have the same number. So Will has to be an innocent, David has to be a criminal, and we don't need Bruce's clue anymore. Or do we? I guess we do. It's reminding us of why this is a one or the other. Will now tells us there are more innocents than criminals in row 5. So row 5 so far has 2 innocents, which means that it couldn't have 2 criminals since there's 4 people in total. That would be the same number. So we have to have 1 more innocent and only 1 criminal. Pink. And David tells us that Flora and Karen have an equal number of criminal neighbors. So where's Flora? Flora has 2 criminal neighbors, we know that. Karen has Helen, which is her first criminal neighbor, and she's gonna have 1 more here who's either gonna be Paula or Rose, which means that Lisa is an innocent. And we don't need David's clue anymore. Now Lisa tells us that both criminals in row 4 are her neighbors. 1 criminal in row 4 is either gonna be Paula or Rose, so that means that the second one is the only other person who also neighbors Lisa, which is Susan. So that's a criminal, right? Yeah. And that also tells us that Tom is an innocent, since the clue says that there's only 2 people who are criminals in row 4. So Tom is an innocent. And now we know that Bruce has more criminal neighbors than Paula. Bruce, Paula. We don't have the total for any of them yet, so let's leave that clue there, and let's look at Tom's. Exactly 1 teacher has an innocent directly below them. Teacher? There's 3 teachers total. We're gonna have 1 teacher here with an innocent below them for sure, because both Karen and Lisa are teachers, and one of them is for sure gonna have an innocent below them, the other one's gonna have a criminal. But since only one teacher has an innocent below them, we know that Isaac, who is also a teacher, couldn't have another innocent below him. So Mark is a criminal. And we don't need Tom School anymore. Now Mark tells us that Will and David have an equal number of criminal neighbors. So Will and David. David has 3 criminal neighbors. We know that Flora and Helen, who are 2, plus someone who's either going to be Isaac or Joe, make 3. And who else has the same number? Will. So Will so far has Susan. That's 1. He's going to have a second one who's going to be either Paula or Rose. And he has to have a third one, so Vicky has to be a criminal, which means that Zara is an innocent. And now we know Karen's total as well, right? Karen's going to have 1 criminal neighbor here and 2 here. What was the clue talking about Karen? There was 1 clue talking about Karen. I'm diverging here. Oh, we also know that Isaac's an innocent, right? Or am I thinking about the previous puzzle? Let's look at the clues. Both criminals in row 2 are Mark's neighbors. Oh, yeah. Karen and Tom have an equal number of innocent neighbors. So now we know that Karen has 3 innocent neighbors, Gus, Lisa, and somebody else here. Which means that Tom has to have 3 as well. And Tom so far has 2. The only person who could be the third one is Olive, so Olive has to be an innocent. And we don't need Zara's clue anymore. Now Olive tells us that Helen has more innocent neighbors than Xavier. Do we know how many Helen's gonna have? We don't. Do we have to look back at Bruce has more criminal neighbors than Paula? Where's Bruce? Bruce is here, Paula is here. Helen has more innocent neighbors than Xavier. Innocent neighbors. Will and David have an equal number of criminal neighbors. We don't need this anymore, do we? Will and David? We don't. More innocents than criminals in row 5. We don't need this anymore either. Oh, so we're gonna have to put some clues together here. These 2. Helen has more innocent neighbors than Xavier. Xavier has 3 innocent neighbors, right? Is there a way for Helen to have 5? Because Xavier could have 4. Could Helen have 5? She could, because so far she has 3. And she could have, let's say, both Karen and Adam be innocents. That would make 5. But there's another clue telling us that Bruce has more criminal neighbors than Paula. Is this what I'm looking at? Bruce and Paula. Paula has 1 criminal neighbor so far. Bruce has to have more than that, and he does already. He has 2. I feel like I'm not seeing something. Laura and Karen have an equal number of criminal neighbors. Criminal neighbors, yeah, that's fine. Vicky has more innocent neighbors than Flora. That's done already. Laura is one of David's 3 criminal neighbors. Yep. There's an odd number of innocents to the right of Helen. Helen? Oh yeah, here. Helen has more innocent neighbors than Xavier. Xavier has 3. Let's say Rose is a criminal. Actually, let's say Rose is a criminal. Xavier now has 3 innocent neighbors, and Paula has 2. which means that Bruce would have to have one more. It could be Isaac, even if Karen and Adam are still innocents. Is there a way for this to break? We're gonna have to figure that out. So let's think. Let's try to make Rose an innocent. Because now Bruce has to have... I guess what we're trying to think is... is there a way for Karen and Adam to be criminals? I mean, if Karen is a criminal, now Paula has 2 criminal neighbors. And Paula and Bruce has to have more than 2. Which works if Adam is a criminal. If Rose is a criminal as well, then Isaac has to be a criminal. And Helen has more innocent neighbors than Xavier. This wouldn't work because now Helen doesn't have more innocent neighbors than Xavier. They have the same number. So this couldn't work. I guess Rose couldn't ever be a criminal. I love my guess. Let's prove that. If Rose is a criminal, now Xavier has 3 innocent neighbors, which means that Helen has to have more than 3. Right? Paula has 2 criminal neighbors, which means that Bruce has to have more than 2. Karen would have to be an innocent, so that Paula only has 2 criminal neighbors, and Bruce has more than that. Like, let's say Adam is a criminal and Isaac is an innocent. Now Helen has 5 innocent neighbors, which is more than Xavier. And Bruce has 3 criminals, which is more than 2 for Paula. I feel like I'm missing something. Karen and Tom have an equal number of innocent neighbors. Tom? Yeah. More innocent than criminals in row 5. Yeah, I don't feel like any clues are helping me. Both criminals in row 4 are my neighbors. Yeah, they're gonna be here. Helen has more innocent neighbors than Xavier. Can we try focusing on Isaac? I guess Isaac doesn't really matter because his relationship with Bruce and Helen isn't affected by anybody else. So whose relationship is affected? Rose? Rose is affected by Karen and Xavier. So that's a candidate. Karen is affected by Helen and Paula. And Adam is affected by Bruce and Helen. So what are the clues? Bruce has more criminal neighbors than Paula. Helen has more innocent neighbors than Xavier. We tried Rose. Rose could be any of them, right? Like we just say that Rose could be a criminal if Karen is innocent. Because now Helen, whereas Helen has more innocent neighbors than Xavier. If Isaac is innocent. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it doesn't matter what Isaac is. Does Bruce have more criminal neighbors in Paula? He does if Adam is anything. So Rose doesn't matter. Can Karen be a criminal? I guess let's try making Rose an innocent. Can Rose be an innocent? Now Xavier has 4 innocent neighbors, which means that Helen has to have 5. If Karen is innocent, now Paula only has 1 criminal neighbor. So that's amazing because Bruce already has 2. And that's more than Paula. Now Helen has 4 innocent neighbors. And Adam could be an innocent, so that will make it so it works that Rose is an innocent. So that doesn't really matter. What about Karen? Can Karen be a criminal? Karen is a criminal. Paula has 2 innocents, 2 criminal neighbors, which means that Bruce has to have 3, so that will make it so either Adam or Isaac has to be an innocent. Criminal. Oh my god. I'm having a hard time. I always have a hard time with this. And let's say that's Adam. So now Bruce has more than Paula. And Tom and Zara and Will are 3 for Xavier, which means that Helen has to have 1 more innocent. Could be Isaac. Rose has to be a criminal then. So that works. Karen could be a criminal. And we just saw that Karen could be an innocent when we were checking Rose. Paula doesn't affect anybody. So let's try making Adam an innocent. And if Adam is an innocent, what happens? Helen now has 4 innocent neighbors, which is okay. I don't know where to look. I don't know where to look. Because we just saw that Adam could be a criminal. Didn't we? That would be good for Bruce. And it doesn't really matter for Helen. This is brutal, indeed. There are more instances than... Okay, I'll go through every clue again once more. Odd number of instances to right of Helen. Yeah, one of them. 1 instant in row 4 is neighboring Karen. Yeah, either Paula or Rose. Flora and Karen have an equal number of criminal neighbors. That's 2. Vicky has more innocent neighbors than Flora. That's 2. Flora is one of David's 3 criminal neighbors. Yeah, Helen, Flora, and someone else. 2 criminals in row 4 are Lisa's neighbors. Susan and someone else. Will and David have an equal number of criminal neighbors. David has 3. Will is gonna have 3. Helen has more innocent neighbors than Xavier. Could we make Isaac a criminal? If Isaac's a criminal, now Bruce has 3 criminal neighbors. Helen has 3 as well. If Isaac's a criminal, Bruce already has 3 criminal neighbors, which is more than Paula. Let me try making both Adam and Karen innocent. Does that work? It works for Ellen, because Ellen now has 5 innocent neighbors, which is amazing for her. And Paula could at most have 2 criminal neighbors if Rose is a criminal. So that's fantastic, because then Isaac would be a criminal. If Adam and Karen were both criminal, that's terrible for Helen. Because now Helen only has 3 innocent neighbors, which is the same as Xavier. And Isaac would have to be an innocent. Now Paula has 2 criminal neighbors, and Bruce has 3, so that's great. But the thing is, there will be no way for Helen to have more than Xavier if Rose were to be an innocent. So Rose would have to be a criminal. And that will make it so that Paula and Bruce have the same number of criminal neighbors. So these 2 couldn't both be criminals. That's what we figured out first. These 2 couldn't both be criminals. But they could both of them be innocents. Could one of them be a criminal and the other one an innocent? In the scenario in which both of them are innocents, it doesn't really matter what Isaac is, right? As long as Rose is innocent. Because then Paula could only have 1 criminal neighbor. In the scenario where Adam is a criminal, Karen is innocent, that's good. Because now Helen has 5, 3, 4, 5, which is more than 4. Paula has less than 3. So that works. Can it be the opposite? Karen is a criminal and Adam is innocent. If that happens, Paula has 2 criminal neighbors, which would make it so that Bruce has to have more than 2, which would make Isaac a criminal. And in that case, Helen has 1, 2, 3, 4. So in that case, Rose would have to be a criminal. And in that case, Bruce and Paula have the same number. So this couldn't be. The opposite couldn't be. So Karen always has to be an innocent. Adam could be an innocent or a criminal. It doesn't matter. Isaac could be an innocent or a criminal, but Karen has to be an innocent always. Wow. Hard. complicated, troublesome, scary, fun. Karen now says that there are 12 instances in total. That's important information. We know how many we have already. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we're gonna have 10 and 11 here. So that means that Adam has to be the 12th. And now Adam tells us there's an odd number of instances neighboring Lisa. Lisa has 1, 2, 3 instances neighboring her, Gus, Karen, and someone who's either going to be Paula or Rose. So Isaac couldn't be the 4th one because 4 is an even number, which means that Isaac is a criminal, and because of that, John is innocent. Now Isaac tells us there are more criminals among coders than any other profession. How many coders do we have? We have 2 coders here who are criminals and Rose. Do we have a profession that has 2 criminals already? If Paula is a criminal, both coders and cooks will be in the same number of criminals. So Paula has to be an innocent and Rose has to be a criminal. Whew! Almost half an hour, but that was really, really good. I loved it. Took my time. This is gonna be a long video, but I hope you did enjoy it. And I'm really, really glad that I did it in Al Green and that I took my time to think and prove everything. I always talk about how important it is to prove your hunches and to make sure that you eliminate the possibility of someone being both roles. So that was a success for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be here again tomorrow with more Clues by Sam. Bye bye. Hello everybody, welcome back to Focus on Settle. Now I'm gonna have to trust that you're just gonna be focused.